Yes, the first question is like A, B, C, D, all the way to F, but it's not as bad once you're actually doing it, okay? So I'll show you what it is and how to do these questions. I'm glad you guys are joining me. Yay. Okay, so our first question is about inhaling and exhaling. So when you breathe, the air enters your lung with a positive velocity, and the air exits your lung with a negative velocity. So for example, this is your inhale, and then you're going to your exhale. Okay, so that's what that looks like. Now, an inhale and exhale will represent one cycle, meaning one period. So when you guys are doing your question, what you want to do is kind of trace out where you have a max, a minimum, that's a minimum, that's a maximum, and then where it comes back to its starting point. So as you can see, that's one cycle. So a lot of people make the mistake with this question where they think that this is one cycle, that's the period. No, you have to include the max and minimum and then go back to your starting position. So that's kind of like a little hint to you when you're doing that question, whenever they ask you for part of B. So we'll talk about that soon. So the first question is saying, what is the equation of the midline? So if they want the midline, you're going to take the maximum plus your minimum, and you're going to divide that answer by 2. So your maximum in this case, if you guys look, is your highest height, which is 0.8. And then you're going to add your minimum, which is negative 0.8. So you're going to add negative 0.8, and then you're going to divide that answer by 2. Okay, so when we put that into our calculator, so that's actually going to give you 0. So 0.8, whenever you have a plus and a minus, it becomes a subtraction. So it's 0.8 minus 0.8 divided by 2 gives us 0 as your midline. Your midline is always the line that cuts it right down the middle. So as you can see, where y equals 0, that cuts it where it's the same distance above and the same distance below. So that is my midline. Whenever they want the equation, they just want you to write y equals 0. So that's the only difference between that. So y equals 0. What does it represent in this situation? This is just your average. Actually, a better answer for this one in this case is just that is the time, or that's when the velocity is 0 in this case. Velocity is 0. This is that in-between time between an inhale and an exhale. So the in-between distance. So when we have 0 liters per second in our actual lungs. So 0 liters per second of air in our lungs, which means that there's no air at all. Okay, so in between inhaling and in between exhaling. If you guys are doing your question, you're going to use the word average. So usually you would use the wording average height whenever they talk about the midline. So for example, if you found that the midline was y equals 5, you would say that this is the average height of whatever your situation is. And then let's go on to B. Amplitude. Amplitude is where you go max minus min divided by 2. So you use the exact same numbers as above, but now you're just subtracting between them. So 0.8 minus negative 0.8, divide that answer by 2. So if you guys put these together and divide by 2, you should see that the answer is 0.8, because that's the distance from your midline to your maximum, and that's the distance from your midline to your minimum. Okay, so your amplitude is just the height between the midline max or midline minimum. Okay, so this is going to be in liters per second. So that's your amplitude. Now the question they're asking for is, what does it represent? This is the radius of your breath. So that makes more sense when we're talking about like a wheel or something. In this case, it actually represents the time, the liters per second taken in during an inhale or an exhale. Okay, so if you're doing an inhale, how much air did you take into your body? And then if you do an exhale, how much air did you release out of your body? So that's pretty much what that stands for in this situation. But usually if you include the word radius, I'll kind of give you the marks there. Okay, so that's a little hint there. And then we have question C, what is the period? So like I was saying before, the period is that distance to go from your starting point to your max, min, and then back again. Okay, so in this case, our time is going to take 5 seconds. So it takes 5 seconds to return back to its initial kind of height. And what does it represent in this cycle? So it represents how long it takes you to go through the cycle, meaning how long does it take you to do an inhale and an exhale, and then when will it repeat again? So every 5 seconds, you're going to start that process all over again. So it represents time to take an inhale and an exhale. Okay, so that's all I was looking for C is what is the period and what does it represent? So it's the time it takes to complete one cycle. And then as you can see, this same kind of image, you know you did it properly if you see the same kind of shape repeat itself. So if I trace out other colors, you'll see that it looks like the exact same thing repeated again and again and again, okay? So that's question C. Question D, it says, what is the y-intercept? The y-intercept is where the graph starts at. So as you can see, the graph starts at a y equals 0. So this represents 0 liters per second of volume, or actually of velocity. And so this is when the experiment started. So right when they started the experiment, that's what the y-intercept is saying. How much air or how much speed was this air going into their lungs right when the experiment started. Okay, so that's what they're looking for here. So you're just looking at what value do you see on the y-axis. You're stating the value and saying what you think it represents in your situation. E, what is the range and what does it represent? The range is what is the smallest y-coordinate, y value, and what is the largest y value. So for a range, we're going to say y is greater than or equal to negative 0.8, so y such that, and y is less than or equal to 0.8 YER. So this represents your minimum and maximum liters per second that air is entering your lungs. So the maximum and the minimum velocity that air is entering your lungs. So like if your question is talking about height for your y value, you would say this is the maximum and minimum height. So whatever your situation is, just use those kind of, use the titles you see along your x and y to describe them. F, determine the equation in the form H equals A sine BT plus D. So I'll just write that out here. H equals. A represents your amplitude. So whatever you put in your answer for, I think B, yeah, for B, that's what you're putting into that spot. So instead of A, I'm going to put 0.8 because we calculated in question B that the amplitude was 0.8 liters per second. Sine is going to stay the same. B is calculated by doing 2 pi divided by your period. So in your calculator, you would go 2 pi divided by our period we found in question number or letter C. So I found that it was 5 seconds. So you could put that into your equation, or you can calculate it. So you can leave it as 2 pi over 5 because that is simplified, or put 2 pi divided by 5 in your calculator and I would get that B is 1.26 rounded to the nearest hundredth. And I do have to round to the nearest hundredth here too. So because it says hundredth, I do have to have 2 decimal places in each of those A, B, and D values. And finally, my D value is the midline. So my midline I found in question number A, and I found that the midline was 0. So I could add 0, but that won't change the equation. So I don't need to include it. So normally I would say +5 or +0 in this case, but I don't need to write a +0. So that is your final equation. Okay, so this would be your answer in this question. So A was my amplitude, B was my 2 pi over my period. So if you find the answers above and use those properly, then that's how you fill in A, B, and D. Okay, so that is similar to your first question. Okay, so the only thing that you're going to have to just think about is what do those numbers represent in your situation? Okay, if you get stuck, just message me and we can I can kind of give you some hints. Okay. Any questions about that one there? So question number 1, is that clear, or is there something that you're unsure about? So let me know in the chat. Are we okay, guys? Perfect. Thanks, A2. Okay. Just want to see if you guys are still with me. That's why. Okay, question number 2. So question number 2 is where you're going to put those values into your L1 and L2 chart. So I'm going to show you those steps in case you forgot. So for day of year, I'm going to put that into my L1, and I'm going to put the hours of daylight into L2. So you're going to do the same thing for your chart. You're going to put some of the values into L1, your top kind of level into L1, and your bottom level into L2. So let's see. So just to repeat how to do that, first you would start by pressing second plus sign and number 4. So second plus sign, number 4, enter. That would clear your list if you used your list previously. Because then when you go stat, number 1, edit, if you do that second plus sign number 4, that will clear all this stuff instead of having to manually delete them. Okay, so I'm just going to have to delete mine. And then I'm going to put in my L1 as those numbers: 15, 46, 74. And then I'm going to go all the way down to 349. And then for hours of daylight, I'm going to go 8.5. Then I'm going to go 10.1, 11.8, etc. So I'm going to repeat all that until I get to 8.1. So all my hours of daylight would go into L2. Okay. Once you do that, you're going to press Stat. To the right, you're going to go to Calc. And now you guys are going to use, for you guys, you're going to use letter C. So if you guys go to, I'll get you guys to look at your calculator just so you know where this button is. If you go to Stat, I'm going to see if I can show you Calc, and then you should be looking for letter C where it says, I'm going to try to get into this. Mrs. Swain has to run, but she's saying all the best. Let me just read what she's saying. She says, all the best. Have a great grad. Enjoy all the activities. I'll be watching for pictures. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to this. So look at my picture, guys. Come to my picture for a second. I just want to show you the button that I'm pressing. So I pressed, because I can't show it in my other calculator, it's not the same buttons. So I went Calc or Stat. I went to the right until I hit Calc, and then you either move your cursor up until you get to letter C. That's the fastest way, or you could just go down all the way until you get letter C, and then you press Enter. Okay, so then I press Enter, and then I just keep pressing Enter until it calculates it for me. okay? So if you're doing that properly, I'll show you what answer you should have gotten. So this is what you can test out to see if you're putting this properly in your calculator. I got A was 4.21, B was 0.017, C was negative 1.40, and D was 12.41. So once you get your values, I'm going to click here. Let me just go back. I'm trying to click on my screen. There you go. Okay. So once you have your A, B, C, D values, you need to write it as A first. So 4.21. Then you put sign, then brackets, B, which is 0.017, X minus 1.40 bracket, and then plus 12.41. So make sure the sign is what follows. So the sign has to match what numbers you see into like A, B, C, and D. Okay, so just make sure that there's no double signs. So a little hint, no double signs. Meaning I shouldn't see like a plus minus there or a minus minus. Okay, so always simplify your signs and then make sure you write it in this form here. So that's what I'm looking for full marks there. Now they're saying use the sinusoidal equation above to predict the average hours of daylight on day 400. So there's two ways to do this. Okay, so remember X represents day because that's your L1. So what you could do, as long as you're in radians mode in your calculator, so one method is to algebraically do it, is you just go y equals 4.21 sine. In brackets, you would go 0.017, and then you put the day number into X, and everything else stays the same. Now, if you put this into your calculator, it will calculate the answer for you. So if you are in radians mode, you put that in there, press enter into the calculator mode, that will give you the answer for question B. The other strategy, if you want to use, is this will help you for question C. So if you do this for B, you're not doing extra steps. So this is another one that I suggest because this will help you answer question C as well instead of having to do double more work. Okay, so you would remember how you have to press the copy and paste button. So you'd have to go to vars. So let me repeat that. So first I press y equals. I go to either y2, y3, doesn't matter, y1. Press vars, number 2 for statistics, and then you're going to go to the right where it says equation. And since you calculated the equation, you're going to press enter, and what that'll do is it'll copy and paste the equation for you. Now, I didn't put in all the values, so it won't do that for me. So I'm going to do the rounded answers just to show you what I'm doing here. Okay, so I'm just entering my equation in. Now, I don't suggest you do the rounded version because that will round your answers a little too much. There you go. Okay, so once you have the equation in there, change your window. Your window, you're going to look at your X value, your L1, and that's going to be what you need to put for your smallest and largest value. So if you look for number 2, day of year, my smallest day of the year was 15. So you can put X minimum as 15. Your biggest day of the year, we know that this question is going to ask for 400. So we're going to go slightly higher than 400. So maybe up to 450. So I'm just using what the questions are asking for and what my chart actually gives me. And for Y, I'm going to go from, let's go from 8. So I'm just kind of rounding down all the way up to, it says, the highest value it's going to reach looks like it's going to be 17.1. So you can go up to 18 if you want. You don't have to like stop right there. Just kind of go around those numbers. Now, what's important here is you have to be in radians mode. Okay, so for this question, you're going to press mode. You're going to highlight radians, and you're going to press enter and then graph it. And what you should do is you should be getting this nice wave shape. If you don't get this wave shape and you get this like weird jagged stuff, like, so if you get something like this, yeah, something that's like a straight line or it's like jaggedy, that means you don't have the right window or you don't have the right mode. So that's why having the right window and the right mode makes a difference, because you get the white wave shape. So for B, what you could do is press trace x equals 400 and then enter. Okay, so I'm going to write down those steps. So you're going to press trace in your graphing calculator. You're going to enter x equals 400 and then enter, and that will give you the y answer. So this is going to be your answer here. So for my example, like I said, it's going to be a little off because I didn't use the copy and paste feature, the var statistics. So, and I have different buttons on here as well. So I'm going to enter 400 and press enter, and I get approximately 9.16. Now this is off because the real answer at the back of the textbook is 9.56 hours. Well, this is 9.16. So it's off because I rounded when I entered this equation here. I didn't use that copy and paste feature, and that's going to change your accuracy. Okay. So the answer, the real answer should be 9.56 hours. And then you have only one more question left. The last one is where you should have that var statistics kind of thing done here. var statistics, and then you go to equation and then number 1. So once you have that copy and pasted equation there from B, you shouldn't have to do it again. But now for this one, they're giving you the hours of daylight. Oh my gosh, the hours of daylight are 15 hours. So they're asking for what day of the year will you reach 15 hours? So you're going to enter Y2 as 15 hours. And then all you need to do is find the intersection, the first intersection, and that would be your solution. So when I go back to my equation, go to y equals, and do you see how my y1 doesn't work for some reason? So I'm entering into y3 15. So you can enter the equation into y1, y2, y3, y4, it doesn't matter. So I'm entering 15, graphing it. And what you'll see is there is two graphs overlapping. They're intersecting each other at multiple points. You want the first intersection for yours, the first time that it reaches 15 hours. So you're going to press second trace, number 5. You're going to press enter. You're going to go as close to close as possible to the first intersection that you are trying to find, and you're going to press enter 3 times. Enter, enter, enter. And I found that it's approximately day 121. Okay, so that's what you're kind of doing, is you're finding the intersection, and then whatever your x coordinate is your answer. So my first intersection was about day 121. And that is it. So that is how you finish these guys up. Okay, so stick on here if you guys have any questions. I'm excited to see you guys on your graduation day, and you'll hear from me a lot next week with your Grad Spirit Week. So good luck finishing your assignment. Stay in touch, guys, and then let me know if you guys have questions so you can finish this up really quickly and then get one course off your plate, okay? So good luck with your other courses, and then again, message me if you guys have any questions.
Hi, Miss Hines. I was
Yep.
just wondering, do you know when they're gonna release like what our spirit days are and stuff like that?
Yes. Probably it's gonna be tomorrow.
Okay, good, because we're
Friday,
going to Edmonton this weekend, and I was like, oh, I hope they release it before so that if I have to get anything, I can like.
No, you don't. Like there's one kind of day, yeah, like there's one thing that you might need some resources for, but like you can always, I'll show you. There's things that you can do around it, so don't worry about that. As long as you have like internet access, that's really all that matters.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a nice day.
You too.